It's the last panel of the conference, so thank you for coming. I want to thank our friends at MTV for not suing us for the Natalie Portman video. Oh no, that was Saturday Night Live, sorry. So the only thing we all have in common is the word media. So we're all going to introduce ourselves and get on with it, starting with Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff Sandquist. I work at Microsoft, and I lead the team that created Channel 9 and a new property called 10 that does a lot of interesting things with media and video. And my other claim to fame is Robert Scoble works for me, so I get the pleasure of getting all the different interesting mails that get forwarded up to me for Robert.
That's real power. Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Porto. I'm a content strategy lead at Avenue A Razorfish out of the Seattle office. I work with clients to help them figure out how to enable their users to create content and create digital dialogues with them. My background's in journalism, online journalism, circa 94, BBSs and all that.
Though she's into digital dialogues, I think she also appreciates analog dialogues as well.
Absolutely.
And we got Paul.
Well, I'm probably the oldest guy on the set here, but I have Resonate, and Resonate's been around for 20 years. I am the CEO. We did the NASCAR portal yesterday in the keynote, and we've designed things like the Xbox interface, a lot of graphics, image systems.
Did you do the camera inside the cars? Is that your shtick?
No. No, we did a WCF.
Oh, that NASCAR demo, yeah. Yeah, I just love the idea of NASCAR. I mean, they're making money. It's the fastest growing sport. They're showing that white crackers are people and that, they can move gradually north. It's important. Okay.
We control the cars, though.
I'm Jason Rapp.
Wait. Audio. Jason, keep talking.
Hi, I'm Jason Rapp. Is that any better?
Nope.
Good morning.
Come
good
on,
morning.
keep going.
Good morning. Good morning.
Audio for Jason. Come on, let's go. Keep going.
I'm
all right.
Jason Rapp.
Go. Hit it.
Perfect timing.
Hey, he's louder than me.
I'm Jason Rapp. I represent the new side of old media on the panel, working for the digital properties of the New York Times Company, which include, of course, NewYorkTimes.com, but also About.com and Boston.com as our signature properties.
Right. So do we all know what About.com is and why the New York Times bought that? So that's one of the things we'll be talking about. Mike.
Hi, my name is Mike Kelly. I am the creative director of a company called Arrow Design Studio in New York. We're a kind of a usability and media-focused design shop. I used to have a company called Underground Film where we were very much in the user-generated content space, and we would bring in short films, sort of format them a little bit, and syndicate them out, whether online or offline, usually for money, sometimes not. And we would try to, the purpose of it was to make an economy and kind of a lubricated community around short content. So when we would get something in, we'd get a movie in that had Hey Jude under the opening credits, we would say, well, we've got some guys over there who are composers and they want their music in film. Why don't you talk to them rather than making our lives really difficult with a movie with Hey Jude, which we know you don't have the rights for. And we would work with screenwriters, for example. We'd do workshops with directors so that they would know how to package their stuff for directors. Right now, it's a nonprofit. I don't really have much to do with it. And it's moving towards all the content being in a Creative Commons space, which I don't think is necessarily the way to go, but I think it's an interesting jumping off point for a discussion about user-generated content.
Absolutely. My name is Mark Cantor. I'm the CEO of a company called Broadband Mechanics. I'm a trained opera singer. So I will be moderating today with my voice. Okay, fine. So we're going to start off talking about end-user content. I didn't have to pay any copyrights for that performance, by the way. I generated that myself. I, in fact, improvised it and made it up. I think that's the future of media, right? Now, Mike just brought up Creative Commons, and that's a really important thing because it's illegal for us to take something that's copyrighted. And by the way, every single thing that exists is automatically copyrighted, right? So it's illegal for us to take something that's copyrighted and give it to my friend and let him use it. So the Creative Commons helps solve that problem with 11 standard templated contracts so that people can legally let people share their content. So we have an organization called ourmedia.org that does that. It's very similar to Underground Film. You're going to see lots more of these places. There's a thing called YouTube, if you haven't heard about it. Dabble, Fire Ant, Video Egg, the list goes on and on and on of all these places that store media. So that's one of the things that we want to talk about is end-user generated stuff and storing media. And as Mike just alluded to, there's these laws called copyrights, which of course feed lawyers to make more money and allow Disney to lobby the Congress to change the law and keeps a lot of fat people fat. But needless to say, during the Oscars, the best stuff during the Oscars was the montages, right? There's these incredible montages on these themes that only one guy at the Oscars gets to do. None of us get to do those montages. Those are illegal, but he gets to have fun and be creative. Now, I've been doing mix-ups for 25 years. I want to take the B-52s with the Beatles and mix it up with Godfather and Apocalypse Now. And I can't do that. That's illegal. So that's how I'm going to start off the conversation. That's my attitude. What do you all think about that?
Well, I think that there are rights that people have to their expressions that they should have some rights to own. I think I've been to YouTube and I was totally amazed that people were actually able to grab movie soundtracks and complete movies from Brokeback Mountain and re-edit them and publish them, because it's, you know, a lot of those studios went to great expense and artists went to great expense to build that image, and to totally take that away and call it your own is, I think called theft.
Don't you think that it in fact enhances that content, and that person might go back and buy the original one where they didn't even know about it before?
What was the context here?
So you go rip off, you mix or mash up some soundtrack or a clip from something.
Right.
Now the person who then sees that new creative expression never knew about Citizen Kane. So now they discovered Citizen Kane.
That's true.
Mike, what do you
take a view of this. I was going to wait till the end and give a contrarian opinion, because we're one of the companies that spends millions and millions of dollars on original content. But we also, it is an interesting issue because we welcome bloggers who read something that one of our reporters has written and talk about it and create a dialogue about it. And we welcome that because of that dialogue. We also think that that dialogue will bring people back to the original source content, because we are the institution that has the person, or in our case, dozens of people in Iraq on the ground, and that's where the ultimate source comes from. Right. So it is a balance, but we encourage that conversation. But of course, we are the ones who are buying the body armor and sending these people over
And
there.
that's the challenge of the future of media, which is that this stuff's happening regardless. And if Hollywood or old media want to ignore it, put their head in the sand, whatever. I think that's called Knight Ridder or something. But we're trying to move forward here.
Everything has its place. If you're into Creative Commons and you want to create your own new digital character, and you want to let people freely use that digital character in their digital movie or whatever the situation is, that's great. You've agreed to enter into that license, and you can distribute that anywhere you want. But if you are stealing somebody else's copyright, if you're infringing on the copyright, I think it's different. Now, I think there's a big difference between sampling and spoofing and mashups for personal use. If you're doing something that, I did a cute little mashup. Well, it's so fun.
I would like to comment about the context that the media is used in, because what you were talking about is your own blog, and you're asking for feedback from your users that you're promoting, and you're allowing for that. In the context of YouTube, that is not in the context of the studio. And so there's got to be a way that somebody allows for that in a proper context that everybody benefits from.
Would you say that BMI and ASCAP and the Harry Fox is a proper way of compensating people currently?
You know, in this world, it's really hard to say who owns anything anymore. I mean, if you look at scenarios in the future of Google automating news creation and restripping and rewording and recontexting stuff from the New York Times, is that theft? Is that original content? Is it changed 10%? That's beyond my mind to be able to
So
define.
these issues are pervasive, and it's not an easy cut and dried answer. Well, Laura, what do you think?
Well, I think that attribution is very important, and credibility is a big issue here, because when you don't know where something comes from, it's easy to misunderstand it. I think I'm a big advocate of blogs, but one of the concerns I have is that people don't attribute where they get content from, and it's very important that we do that. I also think that we are stuck in an old mindset, and when we look at what we call the millennials, the 26 and under group, as you said, they are living like this. They are doing this. The Gray album is one of my favorite albums right now, and this is how they live. So it's not an issue of when it's going to happen. It's just how are we going to handle it. Yeah. I think actually iTunes is a good example. Now, granted, that's copyrighted material, but the concept of breaking things up.
Right.
And allowing distribution. And
so I totally agree with that. Attribution is a core issue. Ultimately, if I open source software, I'm doing that because my logo is at the bottom of the page, and you click on that to find out about my company. And it's my job to be able to monetize that click however I can. So I give away free software. That's my carrot, hopefully draw people in to make some money.
With Channel 9, we've gotten more traffic because people taking our videos and doing interesting things with it. Amanda Congdon took one of our Bill Gates interviews with Robert Scoble and calculated out how many times Bill said and how much that would ended up costing us, because he's one of the, his time is rather expensive.
But you're promoting that.
But at the end of the day, it was great because we got a whole different audience that we never would have gotten before, because Amanda took our content and did some interesting things.
Though I suspect that one of these days, when one of those mashup videos are really negative, all of a sudden the Microsoft lawyers will show up and.
No, I don't think so. I think that that
get
there's
that on record, by the way.
But it's not but that's not really a rights issue. That's just PR.
Lawyer last Friday, you could take his video and
match that one up.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's not really a rights issue. That's, hey, we've figured out a way, we've figured out an angle on getting some nice PR and building some goodwill in a Web 2.0 community.
Yes.
Right. So I remember when the Beastie Boys got sued for some of their mix-ups, there were over 150 sources in one song. And so what I dream of is that there's this concise system so you could find out every single one of those sources. And if mashup artists knew that, first of all, I mean, they would love to do that, to brag and show off all their sources, right? And then to be able to then link that all back to all those sources and let them all make money. That, to me, is where the ecosystem's going. Okay? All right, well, that's end user stuff. Let's move on here. How about standards? Does that matter to any of you all? Or do you see that standards are a way to conflict you, or is it an enabling thing? Or
What kind of standards?
whatever, dude. STANDARDS.
Web standards, good. Make my job easier, make web pages. Communication standards, good. Applications being able to talk to each other, people being able to talk to each other, identities being able to be authenticated by various parties. But if they're not open, they're bad,
All right.
in my opinion.
Jeff?
Last week we launched a new website, and one of the things different from Channel 9 was that we want to reach out to a little bit broader audience, and we want to support the PSP, we want to support the iPod, we want to support our particular media, and it's been a real challenge getting the right format to the right people, and I think that's somewhere making it easy to transfer to a variety of different devices without it being very difficult.
But case in point, the way standards are built are the marketplace. Traditionally, Microsoft would take a standard and they twist and turn it and warp it so it would only benefit them. It's very important that Microsoft supports standards and open standards, because what happens is that just with the little pinky of Jeff Sandquist saying PSP, all of a sudden PSP video is validated and there's a whole PSP video market, where Sony's like begging Microsoft for that, right? So when Microsoft, one of these giant behemoths, come along and support a standard, that's how the marketplace creates standards. And so our game is to be able to play them off each other. It's not like just Microsoft versus Netscape anymore. I mean, we got 4 or 5 major players. Let them all play against each other, even MySpace, let them all play against each other by showing who can support more open standards. Laura, what do you think?
I'm with these guys. I think standards are important, and it gives us structure to work within, but they have to be open. You can't be fixed. Doesn't work.
I'm sure many of you know that the New York Times was very influential and probably the #1 first major media company to support RSS. So where do you see the evolution of the standards going more around RSS and the things relevant to About.com? Do you see some new standards coming out?
I don't know. I'm sure that there will be. I think that you balance what is market driven should also be consumer driven, or at least you hope it will be in the best of possible worlds. And so as we distribute our content through RSS, through mobile devices, on any range of type of mobile device, because that's where there's just so much variety. Those standards, as long as they are helping the consumer experience as well, are good.
All right, let me vamp on a tangent for a second, just to let you know my style. So I'm good friends with a woman named Mary Hodder, and she and Drummond Reed have a new organization called itags.org. So let's just say you spent $400 million on a company that had all this expertise around everything, right? And that's what About.com was. And you can imagine going through and tagging all that content that you have. But the point is that if you tag reggae or NASCAR or whatever the hell, you can't be the only experts in the game, right? I mean, you want to support an ITAG standard so that then all the reggae folks and all the NASCAR folks could all hang off of that, and then you win by your quality content. Right? So that might be a new standard that the New York Times wants to grow.
Hey, Mark, it's itags.net.
Okay, I'm sorry. I take it back. It's .net, not .org.
I was like,
okay. So this is the kind of interaction we like at these panels. So everyone is given permission to stand up and ask any question now from now on. Okay, so up, whatever. Okay. Paul, what do you think about standards?
Well, I mean, we're living in a world of interdependent relationships, and I think the market is driving that, and the ability to transcode or translate between various communication platforms is emerging within Microsoft, and it's primarily because you've got the open standards community driving a lot of the world driving that, and that world is going to create a really interesting explosion of a lot more interesting stuff in terms of graphics and other kinds of things.
Right, so Paul and I are the two gray hairs on this panel. We've probably been around 20 plus years, each of us. So how do you see this, like, where do you see where you are? Are we like 80% there? Are we 20% there?
I think there's some things driving this. I think the FCC requiring the cable set-top industry to go, with an IP standard that you can go buy at Best Buy is going to make IPTV wide open. Walled gardens will go away. The classic network for making mini networks of networks. We're living in the age where every company can become their own network.
But where does DRM fit into this whole thing? When you guys.
I think Microsoft is providing, and other people are providing, really interesting server solutions that manage rights, and I think that we're. The studios for a long time were driving that because ultimately all these companies want to own their own relationships. And Sony has an interest because they have a technology company, but they're really in a different, class of technology company. They're a product company. And, Microsoft has created great tools for developers to augment creation of a whole bunch of different things from the beautiful thing about the current standards emerging with WCF is and WPF and WPFE specifically is you now have a unified drawing environment. And you also have a unified data environment, which is a really big problem when you get into the issue of trying to create complex, user-centric oriented media sites. The complexity of organizing data smartly around the user experience is a data-centric, rules-based issue. And you have to be able to drive that with a good communications foundation. And I think that those things are starting to really emerge. Ajax and things like that are really creating this kind of very powerful, where small companies can build powerful applications calling on all these standards from WGF, Windows Graphics Foundation, to WPF, to whatever. It could be a mix of everything. .NET 2 is the example.
But do you see Microsoft allowing mixing and matching of DRMs?
I think their survival and the market is going to make that happen regardless if they want to or not.
Cool. Now, Ben, I want to call on you, but in fact, I'm going to say one thing first about the BBC first, and since you work for them, you have to wait. Okay. So, all right. Now, what I was struck with during the BBC demo, during Bill's keynote, and hopefully everybody saw that, was that the only way that demo could be produced is that the same company that produces and owns the content is the same company that builds the distribution system for it, and is the same company that builds the interactive interface. And I don't see how, and this is the challenge we have.
I'll argue with that, because we actually built our own. We built the portal from NASCAR, and we did that ourselves. We wrote most of the code for doing it, and we have had years of experience building data-centric user sites. And fundamentally, the ability of that foundation in communication is very critical to be able to build complex. And what you're seeing is just the beginning of a new tool set entering the market, and a lot of people unfamiliar with it. And you've got a lot of graphic design companies that have no technology foundation to them.
But what I meant, Paul, is that like when you want to go, let's say, perfect example. Look, there's a camera inside those cars, the leading guys, right? Now, you didn't do that technology. So for you to include that camera image in your interface, you got to go ricochet through the NASCAR, call that company that did that technology, deal with the rights, cut them in on the action. I mean, that's...
Well, NASCAR Images has a license for that, and you license
I mean, the complexity, now you've got 3 biz dev people working on the project,
Right.
and I mean, it just grows and grows and grows.
Yeah,
and
it's very complex.
Anything is possible. We send people to the moon, right?
Yeah.
But the fact is that, efficiencies means that you can actually make a profit.
Well, I mean, this goes back to another issue, which is really, you haven't seen the emergence of really powerful self-authoring tools. That simplicity is not inherent in most of the authoring tools. I mean, there's maybe 1 million users or so that can do Flash-like things. It's just really hard. I mean, the system that we use is 3D Max from Autodesk, and it takes you 6 months to learn how to play that one.
Well, whoever that asshole was who invented that shit, we need to track his ass down. Ben, go.
Hey, so we've spoken here on the panel a little bit about Creative Commons, and then DRM, which is, I guess, the opposite, which is sort of restricting rights, was then mentioned. I'm just interested in the panel's thoughts, whilst we've been at the conference, that France looks like it might be passing a law that would mean that anyone providing DRM, and obviously Apple with iTunes and Microsoft with their DRM has been mentioned in this case, that they would have to actually provide information so that the DRM could be removed or at least made interoperable with other DRM systems, but potentially actually removed. And I'm just curious as what the panel think about that with respect to the future of media on the web.
Jason? You know about this?
No, not well enough to offer the comment on
Yeah. So a classic example, we're Americans. What do we know about Europe?
Mark, I have a question that's related.
Shen.
Yeah. My question is, I mean, my background is as a historian, and one of the things I really worry about as media moves to digital is I have trouble reading my files from 5-10 years ago, and how when you layer on DRM and you layer on dependencies on lots of other tools, how are we going to maintain an archive and access and historical access to all this stuff, as well as how are we going to use it when it's out of copyright, and how are we going to use it in fair use and research, and how do I, as the copyright holder of content, even if it's under DRM, make use of my full rights, which once it's in DRM, I may no longer have the legal ability to remove it, even though I own the copyright.
Well, you should keep some raw copy of it.
Obviously, but that may or may not always be the case. Some of these tools impose the DRM pretty much behind the scenes.
It's incredibly hard, and short of there being a large number of awful, independent, nonprofit third parties, I don't know how it could possibly work.
Jeff, you work for Microsoft.
Yeah.
You're responsible for everything.
You overestimate the power of my pinky. I think that the key is as the copyright owner is keeping the raw footage from yourself. We look at what we've shot for videos in the last few years, and keeping all those original copies. But when it comes down to DRM is going to help enable some of those situations of controlling your rights as a copyright holder. Hopefully that all the systems have backwards compatibility, always moving forward.
All right.
Well, it's a great question. How do you make in a Creative Commons environment? If let's say I'm a professional writer and I write a book and I want to make money from it.
Yeah.
Who's going to keep track of it?
Who's going to keep track of it? Who's going to say that guy over there didn't pay for it, so he doesn't get to read it?
To my panelists and the audience, that is called an opportunity. Will someone please start a company to do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Now, before we get more questions, I override. Okay, I got a question for the panel. Tell me your favorite tool, the tool that you use for do most of your stuff with. Jeff.
We use Movie Maker. We use Movie Maker to create our content. Robert plugs it in with a video camera and very simple tools. And Windows Media Encoder.
So no Final Cut.
Nope.
All right.
We use a couple of shareware applications that are about $30 each to encode to PSPs and iPods. Found them with one of our favorite search engines.
Cool.
And that's how we create our content.
Laura?
Well, I'm on the research side, not the production side, so my favorite tool is my video camera and really sitting down with users and talking to them about what they want, because we go in and talk to big clients with a lot of money and they have great ideas, but they often don't have any insight into what they're
When you
actually
present those
using.
videos, is it raw, is it edited, is it in PowerPoint?
It's sometimes we present raw, just copies to them to view. Usually we put something together in PowerPoint so that we can shorten down hours and hours and hours of
Paul, I know
research.
it's a crazy question for you. You've got so many people. What is your yearly budget on tools?
Me?
Yeah, you've got like every tool in the I imagine.
Well, it seems to be coming down all the time. 3D Max, which is our main authoring tool for 3D, is $2,000 now. And so that's pretty much for the office. That's what everybody uses. And then of course, on the business side, we all PowerPoint fanatics, and we use instant effects and things like that as a plug-in to do real-time thing, which is just not a
When you
real-time,
take your stuff and you render it within a world, the final product, what is a typical configuration?
There is no more standard. We have customers like Fox that take the application that we did and just have the project file because they'll want to customize it. We have customers that there's like 17 video formats that we deliver in. We don't even. We had the digital beta cam as a kind of like a standard for a while, but that's kind of gone away now with HD. So literally, we just put it on a DVD as a data file, and then they read it into whatever thing that they're on. And,
so the DVD burner might, in fact, be your key tool.
From a data standpoint, yeah.
Yeah. A Corona typewriter, what?
Yeah, right. Obviously, I'm not a technologist, and I don't design and produce the site. But the favorite tool that we have now is actually the About.com publishing system, which is was homegrown and was kind of a hidden jewel for us as we made that acquisition. All of the blogs that you read that we've been doing on nytimes.com are done on the About blog platform. It's flexible, it's light, it allows us to do things quickly. The other side of that is a homegrown ad inventory management system, which gives us fantastic visibility into our entire sales order and implementation process.
We're going to be talking about ads in a second, but go. Mike?
On the production side, Photoshop, Flash, Final Cut, home site, which I know is like 6 years old or something. And on the business side, Entourage, Keynote, Word.
All right, well, I'll answer by saying we mock up. I start off in Fireworks with wireframes. Then we have Photoshop to do our rendering. And we slice that up in layers. We deliver PSDs to our coders who code up DHTML pages and crank it out in PHP on top of our own PHP platform. So that's what we do. Okay? So next question.
Sure. Well, so one question is that, about the tools that we use today, but given the title of the talk, I'm actually much more interested in tools that we might use tomorrow. And my question for the panel is really, what trends and innovations would you like to see going forward in media? We know about blogs today, we know about podcasting, now videos coming up. And which problems do you see currently that people want to have solved in consuming media? What innovations would you like to see? And which ones do you see already coming up? So that's actually,
all in 30 seconds, right? Okay.
Sure.
All right, go.
Agility in publishing, making it dirt simple to reach multiple formats, making it compressed and easy to get up on the web so that anybody can be a publisher of content. Right now you're still dealing with file format sizes and so forth. I want everybody to be able to be their own TV station and distribute it through RSS.
Mike, what do you want?
I want a lot. I want to, from just a functional point of view, I want to be able to just click and drag anything I want from anywhere and dump it in a bucket. I want, if I like a little snippet of something, I want to click it, drag it, put it in a repository somewhere. That could be anything, which I guess touches on microformats.
Totally.
I want to be able to keep what I want. The disposable nature of media as I experience it on a day-to-day basis, that's not always the way I want that relationship to be. I don't always want it to be disposable. So I'd like some tools around keeping things and keeping them easily and keeping them forever, and then making them searchable and, I can refer to them in different ways, yada, yada, yada.
So Box.net and OmniDrive. Paul.
I think one of the coolest things that can happen is auto-annotation of video, because you're looking at a problem that's just growing forever. Where's my picture of my dad? Where's my video of my kids? Why can't it auto-annotate, the location, the speech, so I can search on it like a document, annotate the image pattern on it so that I can cross-reference, groups of collections of videos. Organize it so I can find it and search on it.
And I believe that the Avid Media TV studio thing for about $300,000 does that.
Yeah, I'm talking about a consumer kind of thing that would be not only be able to self-author but also co-author, because we're the YouTube kind of junk is really is co-authoring, right? People just eat each other alive, right?
In a collaborative environment, collaborative tools. Jason.
I think that from the business side, I agree with Jeff. It's got to be light. It's got to be fast. It's got to be tools have to be connected so that we can offer this range of products easily and track and monetize across those different platforms. From the consumer side, I think that the future there is customization. It's being able to build your own media platform to get the content you want from wherever you want it, when you want it, with the ability to store it, with the ability to share it. It has to be fast, it has to be responsive, it has to be connected, and I think that's where you'll see a lot of companies, including ours, trying to move.
Right, and I call that a digital lifestyle aggregator, just to go on record. Question.
All right, my question is in regards to the patent that was issued last month regarding basically the future of rich media on the internet that was awarded to some company in San Francisco. Are you guys aware of that?
Whatever.
What is it?
Whatever. Is this some irate patent clerk and some bunch of lawyers will make money? I got the prior art. We'll kill it.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Next.
2 points and then one for the panel. Firstly, 25 years ago, home taping was killing music. It's still here. Secondly, I think all of this could be solved if copyright went back to 7 years instead of 75. That would give enough time for people to earn their money and then return it to the human race. But the point I want to raise, and for the panel to discuss, is this. I'm a podcaster. I live in Scotland. I work for an Australian company. My file is hosted in America. It's listened to in China, and it's sold by a Russian MP3 site. Where's the jurisdiction?
Planet Earth.
Laura, what do you think?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Well, I think that's exactly the point of the internet, right? And I think that's a thing that Microsoft has woken up to. Just like Ben had to inform us about a new French law.
Well,
no, there is no answer, dude.
I think it's a good thing because I think it's actually going to help Apple because they're narrowing their profits to this one piece of hardware this one gadget that may disappear. I mean, what if the iPod was the beta of tomorrow? I mean, we don't know that. It's cool now, but...
You know, Italy passed a bunch of laws that were really stupid, and they didn't even realize what they were until they actually went into effect, and it was like putting all the ISPs out of business. So the thing about the French is they insist on being different, but if they increase the cost of that ecosystem, Apple will choose, and others will just pull out of the market. So they'll find that they're shooting off their foots. In general, when you deal about international issues in this country, you have to understand that we are an isolated, bigoted country. We don't care about the rest of the world. So the issues that are relevant to us are things that affect us here. Where Microsoft, being a global company, understands is that the internet now is a global thing that they can't control. And the only true power are multi-conglomerates, right? Are companies that bridge across countries. That happens to be Microsoft. So the jurisdiction is no longer about laws and government. It's much more about large companies like Microsoft and Google and Yahoo supporting standards. That's what I think. And by setting precedent of supporting open standards, that will affect global change, much more than trying to deal with each country's law one at a time.
But Apple can choose to do whatever the hell it wants.
God bless them.
With the iPod. You know, if they want to stop me from putting Napster music on my iPod.
You don't have to buy it.
You know, if I wanted to do that, that's their choice.
Right.
And I can choose to, exercise my rights as a consumer.
You got it. And we have the right to steal from them just like they steal from everybody else. They are our R&D. And if you think the music labels are going to tolerate them having 85% market share, watch what's going to happen in the next year or two. Because that's going to change. We're seeing the height of the iPod. There's only one way to go, in my humble opinion. Robert.
What about Second Life? I see that as completely changing how particularly kids are going to consume media and participate in media. I have an evil software company in Second Life with a video screen on the side of it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So you all hip to Second Life?
We launched, it was just for fun as an experiment. We launched, for 10, we created a Second Life island. Eric Rice built it for us. And it's fascinating, all the companies that are starting up and creating, areas in Second Life as part of their business. I don't know what it's going to mean, but...
Robert, I think you know my answer. I love Second Life, but they don't get to be the only vendor.
No.
So until they have a model that allows other operators, I mean, how much money was spent on 3D real world thing? Okay, they got the model right, but they need to have other worlds so that Xbox Live can be in there, and EA can be in there, and the Japanese government.
We need bridges and boats to the islands.
Right, but what I'm talking about is like that's great, and they're showing the model, and the term is called open APIs, and they need to be able to encompass and let other people play along. That's my answer. Go.
Hi, I'm having more marketing background, working for an ad agency in Europe, and I wonder if we see that illegal download of music was much further than iTunes, for example. It took 5 years or so. Moving from illegal downloads of music to legal downloads. I want to ask the panel if you see business models, new business models, which make it much easier for companies to take advantage of the internet. Because, I think the businesses are sometimes too slow to take the advantages of the internet and moving it to, real business.
Okay. Go.
I'll take a stab at that. I think, with these tools now, companies are going to have the power to create their own media networks, and that every company is going to want to manage their own customers, because at the end of the day, if you have a presence with that customer, you can manage the upselling, cross-selling, add-on selling, and services. And so I think customers are going to take all kinds of different devices. There's all kinds of portable devices that are going to be relationship devices that connect to a service. This NASCAR thing is a branded network. It is, you plug in your USB and it goes to that portal, and it's controlled by that. And there's a whole business model. I mean, NASCAR sells every piece of real. If you've ever looked at a NASCAR car, they have more logos on that car than there are in the world. They're real estate. So you're looking at a ton of new channels in real estate media that are going to merge, and companies, I think, are going to take advantage of that and manage their customers through media.
Jason?
Yeah, I think the other issue is kind of lifetime value of the content you create, and that's one of the things that new technology really expands for us. I recently had a debate with someone who was asking us about About.com and saying, well, did you value each page of content? And so it got me to thinking, valuing each page there, valuing each page of that we create at the Times, and the value of that archive is significant in how we figure out how to continue that while making it open. I mean, we make a good bit of money on the archive for the New York Times without it being open.
You want to say what percentage is?
No, but the question we're asking ourselves and trying to be analytical about it, obviously, is how to or what the implications are of opening that up where you can more easily monetize a page. And so, but broadly speaking, this, what used to be the term of art in the newspaper business is the morgue, all these old papers that sit in a room, that is now kind of open and accessible, and I think it's by September you'll be able to search for articles on the New York Times back to 1851.
All right.
So,
and willing to pay for it too, I bet. I'd pay for it. So, Jeff.
But the solution to that problem is never going to be micropayments.
Because
the work that goes into making that transaction happen, at least in the way that it's implemented now, won't work. You can pay the New York Times $4.95 or $6.95 for an archive story.
It's $3.95.
Somewhere in that price point. But you're buying it from the New York Times. If you expand the idea of what the content is to all content, the micropayment thing kind of falls apart. Somebody's not going to pay 3 cents to see an online comic and then be dissatisfied with the transaction and make a $25 call center service call.
No, there's a checkbox that says you don't get to bitch about it. And you click that box if you want a 3-cent transaction.
In Second Life, you can buy a desk or a computer for 25 or 50 linden, which comes out to a few cents. And micropayments are taking off in that world, and I am going to be able to buy things like...
But they're not micropayments of greenbacks.
You can already buy content in Second Life. You can buy music.
What happens is you buy $10 with things like Skype, and you get a certain amount of stuff, and then you chew it down. That's not an issue. Now, Jeff, you brought up the thing that, to you, what this panel should be about. And you said, what really matters is what happens to the content, after it's created, right? Because it's not just, we've been talking about generating content, but there's a whole other world that happens when that stuff's put out there.
That's the exciting part. The content is interesting on its own, but it's the mashup between the people that are watching it. What do they say about it? What do they put on their blogs? And to me, that's actually, where the real power is. If you ask me what my favorite tool is the web, because that's when our content out there, you get to see what people say about it.
Right now, I would be reticent. My board of directors and my CEO, which happens to be me, would bitch at me if I didn't say this right now. So I have to say this, okay? The value is the other people. That's what the web is. That's the internet. That's the tool, and that's what we need to get out there. Media is one of the ways we express ourselves. Even text is part of media, but it's when those relationships start happening that other value gets added, right? So when Robert keeps talking about Second Life, what he's saying is that there's this artificial environment, a 3D graphics world, that because you isolate all of the real world, all you have left is these virtual issues, and then you can hone in on those specific issues of real estate and ownership and commercialism.
But Second Life would be very boring if you were just in it by yourself. What makes Second Life so interesting, it's like the size of Boston. in virtual landmass, and you have people all over there of all walks of life. That's what makes it interesting.
So to me, as communities evolve, the classic business model, to answer his question, is communities. And that's what's different between the untethered world of, Director or Flash, is that tools now can have communities baked into the tool. And so instead of having to read a manual, I can go ask a question of my community and get an answer. And if I really want an answer, I can wave a $100 bill and get an answer really quickly, right, from the best answer, right? And what are the business models? Well, none of the old business models go away. So we're still making money off of ads. We got lots of companies that want to promote and be associated with us. There are such a thing as better tools. Whatever we're at right now, there's a subscription, higher end, better version, right? There's so many different ways to make money. Question?
I'm curious about what's the panel's view on the actual delivery of content, because in relation to how content is consumed, basically the mobile device, the phone, is basically the most common form factor for the human being. But basically the telco is now a blocker in relation to how content is pushed out. They have very particular models depending on how things are done by region. And to take Mark's comment that, okay, basically maybe US folks have a very US-centric approach, and maybe multinationals have a multinational way of doing things, but it's a common problem both on a regional and global level.
Yeah, but even all the way that those models work are all getting tweaked. So though things are still metered in Europe, we don't do that here because we need to kickstart the market.
Yeah.
And American Idol did more for SMS in the cell phone than any other single thing, right? And so Americans are greedy enough that once they start seeing patterns and looking at the 18 to 24s, they'll eventually get a clue. Unfortunately, Verizon doesn't have a clue because they've got this locked-in box. So you've got all this push-pull kind of stuff. I'm actually hoping that Masayoshi Son, because he just bought Vodafone, because he's been willing to go break the mold, right? So he now has enough a soup to nuts, what they call the triple play, the quadruple play going on in Japan, that he can go change the world, or the folks in Korea, right? So then, again, the smart telco guys are going to be watching for models around the world and to learn from that. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, because, it's basically where the internet was about 6 years ago. It's basically creating silos.
Yeah.
Where,
it's actually where the PC business was in the early 80s. But there's about 30 or 40 platforms.
I think there's two issues that you raise. One is the form factor issue, which is the consumer side, and what do we use different devices for? And obviously the small screen on the phone is very good for getting certain types of information and not for others. And consumer behavior will evolve and change as these devices change. On the distribution side that you mentioned, it seems to me, and it's interesting because in some ways it's plate tectonics. These companies are so large, but there's really nothing more fluid than these kind of distribution economics. It was, 2 years ago that we were talking about the power of the cable networks here, or the cable service providers, and Comcast being the giant, and now they're threatened by the new AT&T, which is the baby bells grown back into a much bigger one. So that's
around goes around.
That's right.
And from a distribution model, when you look at the FCC just clearing the utility companies to be able to deliver internet access, that's just going to open it up more. It really is almost open source from a revenue.
Yeah, don't forget that only 3% of the world's fiber is turned on. So there's a whole other dimension of quadruple, 10x10 on capacity that they're just waiting on. They're kind of artificially holding it back to keep the price up. But once that explodes, then, because like YouTube has got to be at 45 terabytes a day of bandwidth. I mean, the whole model is going to break. And hopefully the carriers will realize that they are a very important distribution point, but they can't get too greedy. It's just a matter of tweaking it. God bless Sprint, that's willing to sell off the extra bandwidth to create the MVNOs, because it will be them, Amped, Virgin. Those are the guys who are going to create the new models that will show the rest of the carriers how to make money. Okay? I have no idea what time it is. Are we how long do we have? 5, 10 minutes? 5 minutes? All right. So again, I got to say, I can't wait till MTV has a social network. Okay? Because to me, I'm a child of the 70s, and I watched in the 80s the brand of MTV define our culture, okay? And we're now watching MySpace become the MTV of this generation, right? And so what I hope is that there are social networks for every generation. We're seeing a whole lot of old people not dying. And all those gray-haired old hippie guys are like 70 years old. They still like the Grateful Dead, right? And so there's a thing called classical music and blues and jazz, and where's their social networks? And what happens when we have all these different social networks and each, whether they're Second Life or they're simple UI or something on the cell phone, how do we interconnect these together? That's actually called a family. A typical family has some old people, middle-aged people, and some young people. There's a thing called parental control. All those open standards can interconnect together. It's totally possible for us to have interconnected social networks. So the kids stay on MySpace, and the parents stay on MTV, and the adults are on EMI Classics or something, or Religious Channel or whatever. And I'm hoping that media is an intrinsic part of that. And we've seen that when Flickr came out, when YouTube came out, those open APIs created whole new kinds of experiences of sharing, of collaborating. And that's the power of media. That's really why I'm on this panel. I don't worry about media that much anymore. Media is my earlier life, but to me, media is completely intrinsic. It's assumed. That's why we have these computers and graphics and media. So we can see all this stuff, so we can enable it. Media is a standard part of our language, but it's what we do with it.
Should have been named the future of communication.
There you go. But then if you say communication, you think it's a telco panel. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I call it DLA, Digital Lifestyle Aggregator, because you combine social networking with personal publishing, and that could be video publishing, events, reviews, whatever. Combine that with communications as we know it today, IM and email, right? With, let's not forget, mobile, right? And this little thing called media. So it's all those things wrapped together is what a digital lifestyle is to me. Question?
G'day. Just thinking about, we talk about media, we talk about moving everything out to the web. And you talk about America being a very close-knit community. I work in the Southeast Asia region, and really from country to country, we have massive issues with localization. And just wondering, as you guys are sort of distributing more media to the internet, what sort of progression are you seeing in localization technologies to try and make it easier to get that content out? Because I know for a fact that in Thailand we can sort of work in English, but some people don't like it. Korea, there's no way you can actually do work in English because they speak Korean, which is fine. That's totally understandable. So what do you guys see happening in that space?
Paul?
The question again?
How important is localization? What kind of new localization developments?
Oh, localization.
Double byte, UTF-8.
Well, that goes to the issue of a global company creating a kind of a debabbilizer of sorts, which, you once again kind of the issues of transcoding language, other kinds of things to make it locally sensitive, to make the tools. The biggest the problem is being able to make this stuff. It's not that people want to do it. Everybody wants to be able to do mashups and do MySpace. And if you look at MySpace, it's a lot of stills and text and not very sophisticated from a media level. And I think in the future, I think you're going to see there's a lot of companies trying to attack this whole thing of being able. Localization is really, you're about as local as you can be. And the idea of enabling simple authoring tools for any company to make anything is, I think, forefront on that.
And Jason, outside the U.S., I experienced the New York Times via the Herald Tribune. So
in print.
Right, and so here is this English-centric thing, in our country, and I can go anywhere around the world and get the Herald Tribune, pretty much. So that's your version of localization, right? Whereas CNN, to me, is more like a global, you got the bombs kind of landing in Baghdad and
right. We don't think about we think about localization a little differently in terms of serving content to people in the communities in which they live, and we, in addition to the Times, have about 16 other regional newspapers in the States. And so the IHT, it's local in the sense that it's not global, but it's it's really primarily a pan-European publication. But I think, when we think about the question of localization, I really like that, local is you. It's kind of the what do you need from your media? And in addition to wanting to read about what's happening in Iraq, you may also need a tailor or a restaurant or something like that. And I know it's not the question you're asking, but when we think of localization in media, certainly that's the way we're thinking.
I think there's a great book about John Patel wrote about the search.
Right.
And I think this is all related to semantic web and people being able to once again annotate their stuff so it's searchable.
Right.
And having a presence about you. Part of the issue is all these community of devices that we connect with actually don't communicate with each other. There's just now the emergence of standards to let IP devices talk to each other, and a presence and GPS and all these things that allow somebody to deliver relevancy in the context of the user, and the localization of that content is kind of a broad standards issue that we're all kind of finding through IP in some.
Mike, what are you going to say?
As if you're an expat American living in Paris and you buy the Herald Tribune, do you buy it because it's in English, or do you buy it because it has English news from a voice you like delivered right to your door? Their localization has a lot of different possible meanings, and if you could take translation out of it and you could take delivery out of it, what is localization then? Is it just relevance?
Because there's all these cultural norm issues. Again, we have UTF and double byte stuff from companies like Microsoft that allow entrepreneurs like yourself to localize. But that is external stuff being repackaged. What's exciting for me is I want to check out the Tide kickboxing. I want to check out the price of silk shirts in Chiang Mai. I mean, it's a two-way street. And so I want that content coming here.
Is that where that came from, Chiang Mai?
Well, actually, this is actually from Delhi, New Delhi. Okay, so, Jenna, another question.
I have another question. Something that often in technology-focused conversations, we focus on those people who create content. And even in our discussions of communities, we talk about the people who participate, the people who contribute, who blog, who comment, who write. But I think when you think about media in general, and when you think about communities, there's an incredible amount of value for the community and for the producers of the media in the people who are listening, and the people who are hearing it, and they may be contributing, but not in that community, in another community. And I wanted to know what your thoughts are about media and the role of the people who aren't the active participants, but are the sort of the mechanism by which that media is moved around, is thought about, is discussed, but maybe not within a particular specific.
Well, that's what Jeff was referring to earlier.
I mean, the web is a distributed place, and you're going to have the people that watch your videos on your sites. You're going to have people that are going to blog about it, and I think that's the powerful thing. I mean, one of Channel 9's biggest successes is not the conversations that are happening on Channel 9. It's all the people that are blogging about particular pieces of content.
What I'm talking about is the people who aren't blogging, is the people who are just reading the blogs.
So, dude, how are we supposed to deal with that?
Well, that's what I'm asking, is how is in the traditional media model, you counted. But you had very poor mechanisms for engaging.
We got page clicks.
You got views.
And Alexa.
Right. I mean, now we have other tools. I'm wondering what that changes about media. When you have ways to have people contribute to the overall community through things like their behavior without actually being active in producing.
That's not contributing to the community. That's contributing to the vendor's pocketbook.
Well, it could be, but it can also be used to, say, rank like in something like Dig. It's not just, it can be used by what people view changes what is seen.
But that's, doing something in Dig is participating in the community. Telling that something sucks or something's good tells me that.
Aren't there sites that are based on what you watch?
Actually, there's a lot of mathematic formulas that go into search engines that look at that very kind of data.
Right.
And in order to make assumptions about, what you've linked to, what you scrolled down to, how you read the page, I mean, those are heuristics or things that are going on now that are making the web a lot smarter in its ability to feed back to the individual.
Of all the sites that we do from Channel 9 and so forth, we look at a number of things. We look at, hey, how many people are commenting on it? How many inbound links do we have from blogs? But we also look at the view numbers of how many people are viewing it from what countries and do an adjust based on that. But when people aren't participating beyond viewing the videos, I don't know how you do more.
I think at the end of the day, media is media, and it's always changing.
There are people who are interested in that, and we do more about. I mean, for example, the most emailed list on the Times is very popular, and now someone emailing is a participation, I suppose. But when we launch we're launching a redesigned site, and we're going to have a whole lot more in terms of most popular because people are interested in what others are reading, and we can, of course, expose that, and it's got a cyclical effect to it. The other thing that you think about, we certainly think about in trying to create a customized service. Our editors talk about when they talk about being open to the web community, about editing the web, providing some layer of guidance to what you can find on the web. Because for our readers, the notion of there being a couple million blogs turns them off of all of them, or at least that's the risk. And look at, in a commerce perspective, Amazon's recommendation engine. Nothing by any stretch new, but something we'd love to have, for example, at the Times, to say, you've read these couple of stories, we think you will be interested in these as well. And again, nothing earth-shattering, but improves the experience.
Final question.
Yeah, I really like the way that question of localization came back to, if you take away translation and distribution, what's left of localization? Because I read The Economist, I read New Scientist, I really appreciate seeing the way U.S. looks from Britain. And that question sort of reframed that whole aspect of media. I would love an easier way, talk about what tools we'd like, I'd love an easier way to find out the way U.S. looks from Russia. It's very hard to do that right now for me. I don't read Russian. I'd love to find the way that my company looks from another company's view, that my culture looks from another culture's point of view, et cetera. So there's something that I would love to see that part of the future of media.
And when I hear great ideas like that, I think opportunity for a new startup. So Robert Scoble can blog about it, and somebody can make some money and get bought out.
Have you seen Miramushi's news maps?
No.
It's a tagging-based formula, so you can see what stories are big in other countries based on the size of the text. It's just a little insight into that. It's very interesting.
Say the name again.
Miramushi, if you search for that.
Thanks.
Yep.
And which reminds me about opportunities and making money and advertising. It all comes down to money, right? Unless you have a good business model and you're making money, nothing really happens. This electricity and the air conditioning is being paid for by Microsoft. Robert Scoble has the final word.
I just was going to talk about globalvoices.com, which is a site that keeps track of what's going on in the world in terms of blogs around the world, and as well as news stories. It's an excellent site.
Okay.
It's at the Berkman Center.
Final word.
I just wanted to make a comment about it's not about money. It's about value. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to provide each other some kind of value, whether it's human communication, emotional value, or service value, but it's not about the money. The money comes with the value.
But without money, how do you produce the value?
Well, I mean, that money is just a barter to exchange for value. If you got a bowl of fruit, I'll buy something with the current exchange. Money in the future is going to be, I think, kind of like an exchange thing of very transparent. It could be like a rental model, I think, where you just get what you want when you want it.
It is an expression of value. It's one way of expressing value, but
no. But I think it's really wrong to look at things from a point of view of just money.
Well, I'm not saying it's not wrong. I'm just being pragmatic that without the money, you can't do anything else. I mean,
I
society
think,
doesn't work without the money.
Actually, I disagree with that too. I think that ultimately, It's like Picasso said, whatever you imagine is real. And if you can't, I mean, the beautiful thing about the web is our ability to imagine and connect.
Again, so you got your ISP bill, you got your PC, you bought your camera, you don't have to go to work because you're at home, and you know, and so that's money, and you could be the world's greatest saxophone player, but if you're standing on the street corner, you're submitting numbers 3022 into YouTube, nobody knows who you are, you don't make no money. You know, I'm not saying this is right. I'm just saying.
No. I mean, well, I mean that's just a, you know, maybe that person could be enabled because perspective is 90 IQ points, and most people just don't know how to utilize the internet. I mean, in schools, they should be teaching how to search. You know, people don't even know how to phrase a question right. The question is the answer if you know how to phrase it right.
Isn't that a movie?
No.
Okay. So thank you very much for coming.